Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Barry Jonas. I am the Senior Gaming Analyst at Truist Securities, and I'm moderating today's panel, Suppliers in Demand. We have a real all-star lineup here. We have Melissa Blau, who's the founder of iGaming Capital. We have Matt Davey, President and CEO of Tech Corp. John English, Managing Director of Sports and Technology for GMA, Global Market Advisors. Eric Logsberg, Deputy CEO of Camby, and Dermot Smurfit, CEO of GAN. So we have a lot of topics to cover today and a great list of panelists. So I think we'll just dive right into it. Maybe we'll start with Eric, and anyone can follow. At a high level, I'd love to get your thoughts on what you would characterize as the key differentiators across the sports betting technology world in terms of the different platforms, different engines out there. What do you see as some of the differentiators?
Hi, everyone. So I think of, right now in today's landscape, I think of mainly two things that we see that the really strong sportsbook technologies out there are delivering. First of all, I think it's related to regulations. It's the ability to bring as much as possible of your full core offering to be compliant with each and every state and each and every country globally. That is one of the most important challenges, I think, for sportsbooks today. I think another interesting thing we see is that something that was on the brink probably of becoming a commodity, which is the pricing, the actual odds, is sort of going full circle and I think becoming a key differentiator again. And reasons for that is the product is changing. It's the introduction of in-event combinations. I think it's as more and more of the betting comes through the regulated sports betting market, it becomes more and more up to the operators in this market actually to be on top of the prices themselves. They become the market makers. So I think that is an interesting challenge for the sportsbook technologies.
Great. Anybody else have thoughts there? Dermot, I'm not sure if, I'm sure you probably have some thoughts there.
Yeah, we've had the benefit of the last 4 or 5 months running the slide rule over a lot of different potential sports betting acquisitions for GAN. And we found that there was huge potential in bringing Coolbet into the US next year as a kind of agnostic sports betting add-on. I certainly don't think that the sports gambling technologies are any real risk of being commoditized above and beyond what Eric has already pointed out, but I think there's great appetite for differentiated products and more diversity of product offerings, not just sports betting engine technology providers, but also the intellectual capital represented by the human trading teams that sit behind and know how to drive that technology. Furthermore, from the European market, you get a lot of sports gambler retention features, which I think are going to start to surface up and become visible to the end user gamblers in 2021. We're hoping Coolbet's going to be very much part of that with their award-winning mobile front end and user experience. And we look forward to working with all of our existing sports betting engine providers that we partner with and deliver to our clients, as well as bringing Coolbet online in selected markets next year.
Great. Maybe we'll run down the line. Matt, obviously a great career with NYX and then a successful exit to Scientific Games. From your perspective, what do you see as sort of the key differentiators amongst the wider ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of people get confused where they think you get a sports betting business, it's all the software out of the box and it all works and does everything for you. That's not the way the real world works. We've got some of the most successful sports betting operators in the world have a whole range of different technologies that they use, either developed in-house or licensed and externally. So we see the whole spectrum here between operators that have built everything themselves versus those that license everything, from the player account management system to the betting odds to the user interface to the call center, the whole range. And we haven't seen necessarily one model beat the other model. It's been more about company culture and market positioning, balance sheet, and other factors that have come in. So we see quite a vibrant and dynamic supplier market. We've got some great suppliers on the panel today. I think there's a long and prosperous future for all of them. in the ecosystem, and we'll find operators that will move between either trying to in-house things for control and cost purposes or trying to bring in third-party product to expand their range and have a bigger footprint. So there's a range of different drivers. And I think one of the differences here in the US, though, is we're solving for some problems that don't exist elsewhere. This highly fragmented nature and the rule-by-rule basis each state goes across requires somewhat of a nuanced solution. And those suppliers that figure out how to deliver that are well-placed, I think, to capture more market share.
Great. John or Melissa, anything you want to point out?
I would love to point out some stuff that when I've been working with the Superbook now for 2.5 years. And when we went to go look at the various vendors out there from which to choose from, there were a couple of things in our mind that were very important to us. And one was, how Americanized is this product, right? So you've got these two worlds that exist. One is in Vegas, where there's been relatively little innovation due to high, strict regulatory environment. And then you have this world coming over from Europe that has lots of innovation, but had a lesser understanding of American odds. So, and also the way that they look at sports is in a win, lose, and draw scenario, because the vast majority of the wagering is on soccer. And in America, we've got a very different game mechanic, which is basically, it's very rare that you don't have a winner out of a sport. So the way Americans want to see things is quite different. So to us, one thing that was extremely important was how easy and adaptable was it to make your odds American friendly. And the other aspect is also how were you willing to grow with the operator? So a lot of the operators here, you have your handful of nationwide players, the FanDuels, the DraftKings, the PointsBets, the BetRivers. And then you have a lot of local casinos that need a lot of hand-holding in the beginning, almost outsourced completely. But over time, as we heard earlier, is that odds are really important and will be an increasing differentiator. And will you have the ability to hire your own traders, even if it's for pregame, to be able to manage that yourself? And so the ability to not have just such a rigid model of, it's all outsourced or all in-house is also really important in terms of the technology.
That's a great point. John, anything you'd want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to echo a little bit of what Melissa said as well. Having brought a European book over here when William Hill bought our company, we learned a lot from that experience. At first we thought that there was too European, everything's just it's different from what we do in the U.S. The U.S. is not quite as flexible, as Melissa had mentioned, as comparison to European sports books. But one of the things that I learned pretty quickly during the pandemic was that European sports books actually did kind of work for us, because we wound up watching a lot of things that we wouldn't have typically have on our menu in a U.S. sports book, such as table tennis and Korean baseball, Taiwanese baseball. These are things that now, in the development of our new platform that we're launching, we're going to leave in. We're going to leave a lot of different products in. I think that a big menu, I think that differentiation between, having things like cash out and a lot of other options that are available on the European sites, we're not that friendly in the U.S. or well known in the U.S. So part of our focus is to really focus on some of the things that are happening both in the U.K. and the U.S. and find a nice blend between the two for our customers and give them a wide variety of things to be able to bet on.
Great. Well, a lot of great themes we heard in there. I think one thing I wanted to delve into is the concept of vertical integration. We're seeing parts of that with some of the larger players, maybe not for the smaller players who can't afford or don't just have the capabilities, but wanted to get your thoughts on that model, how you see that evolving over time, and if that can even succeed, just given how many resources it requires to succeed in this business. So, maybe we'll start with Dermot on that.
Yeah, I think you've got a wide diversity of kind of cultural, strategic positions maintained by B2C operators, whether you're a retail casino operator or you're an online-only major brand operator online here in the US. I think some of the larger corporates are always going to maintain a strategy of long-term trying to internalize as much as they reasonably can without upsetting the apple cart, whereas the smaller to retail casino operators are looking down the gun barrel of a multi-year significant tens of millions of dollars investment even to get up and running with the basic blocking and tackling of internet gambling. And it does genuinely boil down to the internal corporate strategies. And I think sometimes corporates think they're going to get a higher valuation in the event they have more technology in-house, that they're going to be able to execute faster and better than the competitors. But in many respects, and certainly amongst our clients, we see nothing but an aversion to the idea of building out an enterprise software development team and developing the infrastructure and the software systems required to power internet gambling. And the more time we spend operating the technology for our clients, the more our clients realize exactly how dynamic an operating environment the internet is. It's not a casino management system deployed in the center of a casino. It's not slot machines that arrive in a truck and are plugged into that system. The internet, whether it's Google security alerts or internet infrastructure, or whether it's Apple changing the rules with native apps instead of web views and HTML5 gaming sucked up in demand, the environment that we operate on is insanely complicated, and it's only as particularly retail casino operators get a crystal clear view on that complexity do they back away from any notion of internalizing it. And I kind of point of fact note Tom Winters, CEO of Golden Nugget, his very recent public statement saying there's no way we're going to try and internalize this and do it ourselves. Very happy to rent software from a whole range of third parties, which is a proven successful model out of the European jurisdictions, which are 20 to 25 years old.
Great. That's really helpful. Eric, do you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with what I've heard before. There's no right or wrong. It is a strategic choice, I guess. The way I think about it, it's the big strategic question whether to vertically integrate or have a more modularized setup. You need to ask yourself if the technology you're going to build the coming years, how big part of that is really going to create differentiation for you, and how big part of that technology is something that others could build better. And also probably, I guess in any scenario, the vertical integration is going to be more costly, whether you're big or small, whether you go with a expensive supplier or a cheaper supplier, that is going to be the more costly option. So the question is, what part of technology do you really need control of that can create real differentiation for you? And that will be different for different businesses.
Yep, makes sense. Anyone else want to talk about vertical integration?
Yeah, Barry, I
Sure.
think there's a couple of observations here. One, we typically think from an operator perspective, but I think the operators don't think from that. They think from a consumer perspective. So how do you achieve a frictionless experience for the consumer, get them on board and engage with your business, and then have them have access in a seamless and frictionless environment to all the products that they want to consume? So be it sports betting or iGaming or bingo, lottery, et cetera. So operators are focused on that, and they have a couple of challenging priorities here. One, they want to differentiate, so that gives them a driver to kind of in-house technology so they can control and then bring in innovation around that. But at the same time, they're also super busy and they have a ton of projects on, so they want things very easy and taken care of. And so suppliers are caught in this kind of juxtaposed position of wanting to supply things that are simple and licensable and cheap and you can roll it out, versus how do you allow them to differentiate. Historically, what we've seen operators look for is control over the user interface and control over the player account management system as kind of key drivers around control and speed. I think that's changing. I think in a highly fragmented marketplace like you have in the US, it's a perfect environment for suppliers to be able to add value by solving problems on a state-by-state basis that allow operators to be able to move more rapidly into new states. So take the US, where we've gone from effectively 0 states on sports betting, or 1 state, to 25 over a period of 24 months. by leveraging your supplier's technology, you can really solve a lot of problems and focus on more value-added aspects of the business. So it's a very interesting dynamic. I think it's going to change over time. I think there's a natural tendency to the larger operators to think they can in-house. And I think there's also a real opportunity here, particularly in the US, for suppliers to prove that that doesn't necessarily deliver the best result and that you can differentiate quite well, even though you use a common supplier.
Got it. Anyone, Melissa, John, anything you wanted to add?
Sure. From our side, we've always been, let's build it. We've been, since day one. Well, early on in the early days, there wasn't a lot of third-party technology out there. Today, we try to, tailor our stuff more towards the customer's desires. And there's so much third-party content, so much third-party technology out there that it's made life a little bit easier for us and a little easier on the budget, if you will. But for the most part, we've always been build our own stuff, build our own platform and everything else. But to add on now today, some of the more current technologies, such as artificial intelligence, different things that you want to add on to your online platform. Like for instance, during I'll relate back to the pandemic. It wasn't just sports betting that mattered to us. It was also live dealer. There were a lot of things that kind of came into play. Well, we didn't have live dealer studio, so we moved to the third-party type of content. So I think that for the most part, it's always good to have control of your product, not to have too many middlemen involved, not to have so many different lack of control, I should say, or of what you own. But yet at the same time, it's a choice. It's a personal choice, as was said earlier. There's some pros and some cons to it. You might not necessarily get along with your vertical integration. The vertical integration, depending on whether you're the smaller guy or the bigger guy can typically have some control over your company. So it's a personal choice there. We choose to build when we can, and when we feel that it's too costly or that it's going to become too cumbersome, we choose to go third party.
So, and I just want to add, I think, if you look to Europe over the past 15, 17 years, clearly the more successful operators have been the ones that have been able to justify going vertically integrated and building and operating all their own stuff. It's very hard when you have 5 things that are a priority to you that may not be a priority to your supplier, and you're constantly fighting for that attention and making sure you're considered the most important person or most important client. And it is a continual struggle that you'll never win. And so the ability to own that is obviously a competitive advantage. But again, it doesn't make sense. If you're a regional casino in Michigan, it doesn't make sense to be vertically integrated. So, and it doesn't come always down to the best technology. There are other aspects to being really good at what you do, such as marketing or search engine optimization or the affiliate marketing or, the ability to operate better on the mobile. So there are other aspects to this than just being vertically integrated if you cannot justify it.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I just wanted to touch on one other topic here, which is the sense of switching costs. I think you can go back in time and see that they're quite substantial. There have been instances where switching costs have been disastrous for some, yet we certainly have seen increased announcements about people internalizing whatever, the PAM, sports betting engine. So has something changed, or are those risks still pretty relevant today? Whoever, I'll throw that out there, jump ball, whoever wants to comment.
I'll take it. Switching costs are very real. I think here in the US and stories proliferate in Europe over the last 20 years of disastrous migrations from technology stack A to technology stack B. I think as a guiding rule, an operator is risking between 15 and 40% of their revenues from one day to the next. In some other reported anecdotal experiences, it's been much, much higher than that, because when you wake up one day and the end user consumer can't log into their account, or their account balance has gone missing, or they're being prompted to re-enter everything from credit card information to email addresses to cell phone numbers, then you have some disastrous inflection point in the consumer relationship, and they tend to bounce onwards. So switching costs are very, very high, and the switching costs get greater the bigger a business that is built on a specific supplier's platform. And I think the switching costs are much lower when it comes to content. Switching costs of sports betting engine, it's been reported widely that switching costs aren't that great. Equally, the switching costs of remote gaming servers for online casino content. But again, the continuum remains extremely wide, from single-digit percentages to north of. So it really depends on what part of the technology stack you are talking about, and the impact on the consumer experience moving from supplier A to supplier B.
Great.
Exactly. I'd like to add on to that and say that, not only do you have the cost to bear, again, depending on which stack you're switching to, but not only do you have the cost to bear, but you have the timeliness of regulatory approval and the cost of that on top of it as well. So not only might you incur a lot of cost in the development changeover of a stack to another, but you may also incur a large amount of time and effort with labs, which is also costly as well.
Great. And anybody else, or we can move on? All right. I think, look, as investors, we hear a lot of investors spend time pontificating about how the TAM will develop over time, and they talk about operator market share dynamics. Is this going to be a 20 billion market? Is this going to be a 50 billion? And will there be profitability? But I think there's also the interesting question of how the supplier ecosystem evolves over time. Do you see consolidation? Do you see ultimately commoditization, and maybe you get to, there's a few things that are not commoditized, which you can charge a lot more for because they're really hard to do. It's a little bit of a crystal ball, but I'd love each of you maybe to give me any general thoughts about how you see the supplier ecosystem potentially evolving as we think towards this industry's maturation. And we can start with Dermot.
Look, there already has been consolidation. Look at the mega merger between Evolution and Net Entertainment coming out of Sweden. Two big content powerhouses coming together. So the consolidation is already out there. We are playing our part as a consolidator by announcing the Coolbet acquisition in order to bring their trading capabilities into the US over time. And we very much look forward to bringing, not just those capabilities, but the intellectual capital that they possess in-house to the benefit of our clients. I think there will inevitably be more supplier consolidation from land-based moving online. I do think that there are major land-based casino equipment manufacturers who've yet to really weigh into the space. Maybe they've dipped their toe in the waters and they've developed a few online casino games and they have an RGS, or they've rented one from somebody. But I think you will see much more consolidation between the two channels of retail and online, and how that manifests and who that manifests with is in the realm of pure speculation. But I do believe that just as Matt Davey and the Knicks crew kind of started the ball rolling with the NYX acquisition by Side of the Games, I think you will see more of those happen over time.
Matt, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, no, Dermot's 100% right. We executed, I think, 10 acquisitions over around about a decade, both as a private company as well as a public company. And the drivers for that were a couple of key drivers there. One, product expansion. And Dermot's given us a really good example of how he's expanded to bring on board sports betting into his business. And that makes sense from an operator perspective. They like dealing with a single vendor where they can get all of their technology and products under the one integration and the one contract. I think there's a driver there as operators get larger. They want fewer and fewer suppliers to have to worry about, and they'd like to simplify their life. So I think there's a key driver there from a supplier side to increase the product set under one umbrella. And we can see a world where there's half a dozen or a dozen scaled suppliers that have all the key products under one umbrella. The second part is geographic expansion. So we were looking to be relevant in both Europe as well as North America and Australasia and other markets, because you can attract regional operators that can be quite valuable to you with a broader geographic reach. So there's definitely going to be an ongoing driver for consolidation where suppliers that get to scale look to bolt on either product extensions or geographic extensions for their business. And we've got some great examples on the panel today, and I'm sure we'll see more as we go forward.
I'd love to expand on that a little bit based on like what both Matt and Dermot said. So I work for a fair number of land-based casino operators in the US, trying to bring their operations online as well as just generally getting them into the sports betting sector. And I cannot tell you the first question typically out of their mouths, when we're in a group is, what is Scientific Games doing? What is IGT doing, right? There is this kind of want to stick with a lot of the suppliers that they feel comfortable with and they have trusted all along. And there's a lot of pressure if you say, oh, I want to go to Europe and bring this unknown entity that's never been licensed in the United States into the US because it's a better technology. And it's hard, so I do think that when it comes down to the potential further consolidation, and I use Scientific Games and IGT as two of many, right? There's the Everys and there's the AGSs and the Konamis of the world, and they have yet, as Dermot have said, to get into this sector in a material way. Yes, Scientific Games has made a lot of acquisitions, and IGT has been around for a very long time through its Italian operations, but their technologies, the technology in the industry continues to evolve, and they need to evolve with it as well as enter into it. So I do think that there's room for further acquisition and improvement on their products, and I'm hopeful that they'll get there.
I'm happy to let somebody speak, but I guess I'd have a follow-up there, maybe more from for Eric, Dermot, and Matt as well. Matt, selling NOAX to Scientific Games, I think was a great acquisition for them, and it sort of entered them into sports betting. But you could easily make the argument that Scientific Games, and I cover them as I do IGT and the other traditional manufacturers, they haven't necessarily seen a multiple expansion. You could look at where Dermot and Eric's companies trade on a multiple basis, and they're by far well ahead of just on a pure multiple basis where these larger, more conglomerate type businesses trade. So I guess as we think about consolidation, maybe more into the retail realm, is that more a maturity move? Is that, because it seems, if anything, we've put out research suggesting unlocking that, the potential to unlock value by slicing and dicing Scientific Games. As various elements of gaming, we've seen that argument. So I'm curious from your different perspectives, maybe more Dermot and Eric today, as your sort of hyper growth mode, but not at the same level, let's say, of pure EBITDA as some of those larger, more mature players. How you think about that dynamic?
So it's a great question, Barry. I think the market from a public investor perspective is differentiating between old school land-based analog retail versus online and digital. And we're seeing it in both operators as well as suppliers. So you look at DraftKings valuation versus, say, MGM, right? MGM has a lot more EBITDA. It actually has positive EBITDA. So the institutional investor and the retail investor is definitely differentiating between what is a business highly levered to the high growth digital channel versus those that either are purely land-based or a hybrid model. Penn, I think, has received a nice boost on the back of its movement into the digital channel. And you could suggest that Scientific Games perhaps has seen that as well. It's gone up from $15 to north of $30, right? So, and that was over a short period of time. So I think the market is saying it prefers a pure digital channel. I think there are some benefits to the old world land-based, cash flow model of positive EBITDA, but we've yet to see that really be expressed from an investor perspective. So we'll probably see that divergence, I think, while the industry stays in hyper-growth mode. And I think as the industry consolidates, that's where we'll start to see a different appetite from investors. But that could take 5 or 10 years. This is not, I don't think, a blip. It's not something that we'll see change in the next couple of months.
Got it. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick comment on that as well. I don't see the mergers and acquisitions or the growth slowing down anytime soon. And even if you take a look at suppliers and operators in the digital world like Flutter or SB Tech and DraftKings that came together to have a system to be able to do what they need to do. But I think that we may only, NetEnt was another great acquisition by Evolution. I think that we're going to see a lot more of these things come together as time goes by. The other thing that I heard in the first part of your question was the TAM, or the total addressable market. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon either, because if you take a look at some of the new sports that are coming into play, such as esports and other types of content, this is content that's being created every year, and we're getting younger and younger audiences growing into this marketplace. So I think that the total addressable market is still unknown and still growing.
Great.
I can add, sorry.
Yeah, please.
No, I can add, I think compared to how the operator market evolves, I think we should expect definitely that there are fewer suppliers, both on the sportsbook side, but also on the gaming management platform side. I think there's going to be less room for differentiation among those suppliers that are going to deliver a nationwide sportsbook. I think the suppliers are going to be judged on more so excellence in technical performance and scale than actually differentiation. I think that both from a platform sportsbook perspective and gaming management perspective, I think there will be secondary suppliers surely coming up, supplying to in-house sportsbook, niche parts, sports side products, both to the core platforms and to the in-house sportsbooks.
Got it. Great. Okay. Unless anybody else wants to follow up, I was going to move on to another question. Any other takers?
I was just going to offer, Barry, the D word, right? Everybody seems to be avoiding the debt issue that still hangs around in a fairly mature industry like casino equipment manufacturers. I think that is also one of the key considerations that we certainly hear out there in the investor space. It's not just about hyper growth of one relatively small part of your business if you're a diversified conglomerate equipment manufacturer, but it's also about the debt overhang that tends to sit on a lot of these guys on the back of a fairly acquisitive consolidation phase that the industry saw through the noughties and into the mid part of the last decade. So I think that is a real issue, and that doesn't bedevil suppliers in the same way it does both operators and the very mature casino equipment manufacturers out there.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, Dermot. I did want to touch on innovation. I think in maybe Dermot's panel, the CEO panel, they touched on this, but I'd love to get everybody's thoughts on potential areas you think we can see more innovation developing for sports and iGaming in the future, especially if we're kind of get to that 50 billion TAM over time. Maybe John, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I mean, I mentioned it just a few minutes ago. There are things that, I see some bookmakers cringe when I say the word because they're just not used to it yet. But, we're actively taking wagers on esports. And the beautiful thing about esports is that particularly during the pandemic, we were still able to book a fair amount of matches. But aside from that, it's ever creating content. It's constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. And as it does, it adds more customers. It brings in a younger demographic, one that seems to be very active in this space. And, if you just take a look at the growth of Twitch, or you take a look at growth at YouTube or any of the other channels that are broadcasting any of these, or you take a look at the prize pools of some of these championships, they're only growing. And the audience is growing very, very rapidly. So I think that, when it comes to technology, content is going to play a big difference. And, let's think about this. When was the last time we had a new sport, right? I mean, MMA, perhaps, XFL didn't do all that great, but here in the U.S., MMA was probably the last well-organized sport. And as we see esports becoming more organized, it's something that we've got our eye on. We're watching it, and we're watching it grow, and I've watched it grow even further over the last 8 months. So I think that there is still a lot of growth when it comes to technology, being able to bet in-game on the various matches that are there, I think is vital, and I think is something that's proving to be a really good thing. And of course, the most important stuff in comparison to all this is to make sure you got proper data that's coming in, and we're watching the breadth of data grow as a whole, which is important to the industry's development as well.
Great. Melissa, do you have any thoughts on where potential innovation could be headed in this industry?
I'm going to be a little less positive than John. I've been chairing the innovation launchpad for Clarion for 12 years now, and I have embraced the innovation, and I think I'm frozen right now, but at least I'm frozen in a good position, at least from my perspective.
You can hear you.
And so I love innovation, right? And I guess the innovation is relative, because I look at this on the sports betting side of the industry, and I've been in this industry as a couple of other people on this panel, older people on this panel, for 17 plus years, right? I've known Matt and Dermot since 2003. In fact, Matt helped me with my first speech. And so I have really wanted to embrace the innovation. And I've been speaking on esports, in fact, for the past 5 years, 6 years. And it's been, I do believe in it, right? It's just a matter of when. I mean, to me, the last big, quote unquote, real innovative thing that happened to this industry was the early cash out. It went from being a nice to have to a need to have in Europe over a period of 2 or 3 years. And then back in 2006 was the major introduction of in-play wagering that was very low margin, not a great business. And it wasn't until the bigger sports books learned how to really trade it properly did it become a much more profitable business. And then companies like Kambi were born to help the smaller and medium-sized operators really figure out a lot of the innovation that they didn't have access to. So to me, it does happen. It happens in waves. They're very discrete waves, and you definitely need to be on top of it. And I guess, and I say it's relative because when you look at the Vegas bookmakers who have been a little bit shielded by the regulatory bubble in Las Vegas, it's all innovative to them. But it's just not as innovative to a lot of the European bookmakers. So I cherish innovation in this industry. I do feel like we need it. I think we need to continue to evolve. I just don't see it as much as I would like.
Barry, as Melissa has nicely dated us on this conference, it's a topic I continue to see from time to time. I remember when poker first became big, people would call up and say, what's the next poker? Is it bingo? Is it online chess? Is it, what is it? It turns out from a consumer perspective, in the gambling industry, which we're operating, we had a saying, players want an entertainment experience, not an education experience. A vast number of our players aren't looking for something brand new and different. They're looking for something they know and trust, particularly on the casino side versus the sports betting side. So we haven't seen a huge amount of innovation from a Silicon Valley perspective. And I continue to get people from the West Coast saying those slot machines are terrible. There's only 5 reels. There's a bunch of symbols. We could do a much better job than that. We could have holographic slot machines that jump out of your screen and just wow the consumer. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for entertainment. And I think the industry's done a phenomenally good job of providing the entertainment. But where the innovation's coming from, as Melissa points out, is removing friction from the market. So the early cash out, there's really only 2 real advances in sports betting over the last 2 decades, in my view: in-play betting and early cash out. 2, right? Yeah. But you've seen the industry grow dramatically because consumers love the product. Another form of innovation, Leo Vegas jumped into a highly competitive online casino market with a product that just focused on the mobile. They were really the first kind of startup to really focus on that. And why was that innovative? No one else had done it. Everyone else had a phone, but nobody else had really focused like they had. And they carved out a very nice niche in the marketplace by focusing on it. So in my mind, it all comes back to convenience and entertainment. And if you can deliver that through innovation, the back end, through plumbing changes, through improvements in your technology, then that's fantastic. But I don't think we need to focus on necessarily innovating around content. I think the market knows what it likes, and we've got that today.
Yeah, no, I can add to that. I totally agree that we tend, when we talk about innovation in sports betting, we tend to think only about features, new sports, new products, etc. But I mean, just an example, it is quite a good innovation that today you can bet on every point, on every tennis match that is going on 24/7 in the world, or next corner, or what have you. And I think this is a key part going forward as well. And to what you said here, removing friction. I think there's still so much to do here about further removing friction, the friction that we really only have in sports betting. You don't have this in the other gaming verticals because you're dealing with a real event here. You need everything to work in perfect sync, from the collection of data at the stadium into the sportsbook and out to the app and the end users. And I think much investments going forward as well is really going to be motivated to further sort of increase that, removing the friction and the general betting flow to the end users.
Dermot, you kind of addressed it earlier, but any follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be broadly cynical on innovation in that it tends to be largely incremental in nature as opposed to a major tectonic shift. I do think innovation comes in various different shapes depending who you are. If you're a sports guy, it's early cash out. If you're Leo Vegas, it's all about addressing the UI, UX experience for mobile gaming. If you're a retail casino, it's probably about ensuring that your retail rewards program is properly seamlessly integrated with your online product offering. If you're a slot math guy, it's about unique features and multiple ways to win, or mega ways or otherwise. So it really does depend on who you are, which sector or product vertical you obsess about on any given daily basis. For us, it's really about making sure the technology for the fundamental blocking and tackling of internet gambling is as optimized as possible to convert our clients' marketing dollars as effectively as possible into newly funded online gambling accounts, and make sure that they get through that all-important conversion funnel as effectively and efficiently as possible, as well as delivering as diverse a product range as is permitted by the various different regulated market constraints placed on a lot of suppliers who desperately want to come from Europe or Asia into the US, but are hit in the face by the stubborn reality of gaming licensure infrastructure deployments on a state-by-state basis as opposed to cloud, and all the other myriad problems of getting the basic blocking and tackling done, and done extremely well here in the United States.
Great. Well, I think we've touched on a lot of topics. I actually got via email one additional question, which I'll throw out there. I think the question is, do you think that the market at this point is settled, or do you expect to see changes in terms of vendors and suppliers on a go-forward basis?
I think we're going to see changes as we constantly move forward. For instance, Caesars just acquiring William Hill. We're going to see a big change in players as we move forward through consolidation. through new players coming in from different marketplaces, from different parts of the world. We're already starting to see it from many different countries. And to go back and not to date myself a little bit, but I've been doing this now for 36 years. And when we first started with technology to us was what we called the wager pager, which we actually used beepers and low-level antennas to be able to place phone bets, which then moved to the kiosk, which then we moved to the mobile. And, we produced the first mobile here in the U.S., and it wasn't quite that long ago. It was only 12, 13 years ago that the mobile has been around the U.S. market. When I say the U.S. market, we're talking about Nevada. We lived in a box until 2018. So technology was kind of stifled. We used whiteboards, we used yellow pads, and we used pens up until, 13, 14 years ago. Now to see the technology that's coming in from all the different stuff and the ways to distribute it, such as Apple and the various stores that you can go in and download your apps or even web apps themselves. The technology is there to be able to present content, and it's reachable in everybody's pocket. And to me, I think that's been the greatest technological advance in bookmaking or sports betting, perhaps in history. As about 65 to 70% of all bets now come over mobile. So I think that's a big play for the industry. I think that focusing on mobile first is not always the best move, depending on the product that you have. But as mobile chips are moving faster, as things are moving faster, I think we're going to see a lot more of it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think just as we think about operator market shares, I imagine we'll see shifts in supplier market share over time as well, depending on who has the best technology and who can innovate to the extent you believe in. The world will innovate much. Well, I think we're a little bit over. Unless anybody has any parting shots they want to end with, I think we'll end here. I'll just throw it out in case anybody has anything they want to end with.
I did want to say one thing, just really quickly. If you look back to what happened in Europe with Bet and Win, BWin, now GVC, and you look at what's happening here, it's almost like a playbook where, when companies are spending 200% of their revenue in a given quarter, the world is ripe for change. It's not sustainable.
And I'll add one thing too on the way out is that we haven't really addressed all the media partnerships that are happening as well. There's a lot of discussion around how television and media companies can help increase the sports betting business as well. So we haven't talked about the Stars Group and all the various things that they're doing with Fox and so on and so forth. But those are all great subjects, maybe for another session. But I think that's something that's also been a big growth sector. We're watching a lot of sports betting companies make deals with media companies.
Yep, definitely a few panels I think touching on that. And anybody else? Otherwise, I think
happy to give a couple of closing remarks. I think the one thing a lot of people miss out on is that there's still a tragically small number of online casino games populating the virtual gaming floors of online casinos here in the US. I think it's literally sub 1,000 games delivered by GAN to our clients' online casinos in the most mature market of New Jersey. So I think if you compare that to European markets, very competitive, very mature, but there are literally thousands of online casino games. And I think we're going to see a significant step up in particularly online slot content coming into the marketplace here in the United States over the course of the next year, 18 months, some of that enabled and executed through consolidation. In addition to that, I'd like to kind of try and get everybody excited about Michigan. It's not every day that we get a Hail Mary caught and completed, but Michigan JCAR committee this morning, we're very much looking forward to switching on the next major building block of the internet gambling total addressable market over the course of the next few weeks. So everybody on this call who's involved in Michigan, don't expect to have a restful Christmas.
No, I don't.
Eric, and any parting shots?
Well, no, to your question, I think the market is far from settled. I think we expect to see many changes over the coming years. I mean, we're only 2 years in, and compared to Europe, I think it took a long time to become a mature market. So I expect many changes. Can't say what they are, but I think that's what to expect.
And I guess we'll give the parting words to Matt, who's trying to figure out how to allocate more capital now into the next big thing. So, Matt.
No, it's a great point. Look, I think you've got this massive potential future market here, and I think that's attracting players both domestically and internationally. You've got some great companies here. So Dermot and Eric, for instance, have built a great digital footprint in the US. My sense is they've caught a few land-based companies flat-footed here, and there's only one or two ways to do it: either you compete or you buy. And so I think there'll be a lot of strong inbound interest from other companies looking to consolidate in the industry. And you look at people really trying to figure out the puzzle that is the US market. Michigan just came on board, which is fantastic. We've still got some really big states that may never come on board. California, Texas. If those do, that's a real game changer again, and it changes the way we think about the TAM. So I think you'll continue to see companies look to exploit their position. We've seen a few of the questions come in from the audience here talking about how do we see media deals, for instance. That's just a piece of the puzzle here. Operators are looking at how do they acquire players at the lowest cost possible and get the broadest reach, because this industry is a scale game. And that scale drives both operator consolidation and supply consolidation. Yesterday, we announced a £30 million acquisition of an asset from Sportech by an Australian company, BetMakers, that we're involved in. That's about expansion. How do you get better positioned in the US market to expand as this kind of rising tide lifts all boats? So I think the panelists here have established a really nice digital position. I think that's going to be in demand, and I think there'll be plenty of inbound interest from both operators and suppliers looking to consolidate or establish a position in this industry.
Great. Well, I wanted to thank everybody. This has been an extremely informative panel. Everyone on here is extremely well versed, and thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Great to see everyone.
Likewise. Bye, guys.